Just so you know, all the music from this video is now up for free on my Bandcamp, the link of which will be in the pinned comment below and in the description. It's 9 AM on the morning of the 23rd of April 1988, and a small crowd has assembled outside a new supermarket. The new shop is a 90,000 square foot building, reportedly costing in the region of $5 million Canadian to build. Now, the first customers of the shiny new shop were instructed to park on the building's rooftop car park. Most of the customers are senior citizens attracted to the store for its opening day discounts. As the small ceremony is complete and the wacky shopping car race begins, the store fills up with its customers. But just 15 minutes after the opening, the building's roof collapsed. The disaster would gain the nickname Cave on Foods, a play on the supermarket chain's name, Save on Foods. Today we're looking at the Market Square collapse. My name is John and welcome to Plainly Difficult. This video wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for my YouTube, Patreon and Ko-fi members. If you like early access and ad-free access to the videos on this channel, you can from just £1 a month. As always, the details will be in the pinned comment below. Station Square. This is Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada. It is a city that by the time of our disaster in the late 1980s had a population of around 150,000 people. During the early 1980s, plans for a metro system in the wider Vancouver area led to the SkyTrain project. This aimed to hook up Vancouver's closest neighbouring cities, one of which was, well, you guessed it, Burnaby. Like a lot of rapid transit projects, the train stations become economic hotspots. In Burnaby's case, this was the city's main train station on the network, called Metrotown. Seeing this potential economic hotspot in the making, a number of retail areas were planned as part of the development of the Metrotown area. Initially in 1986, the Metro Town Centre, named Metropolis, was opened, followed by the smaller Station Square, which is the main focus for our video today. So the land that was to be Station Square was rezoned in 1985 under the $100 million Canadian project. The project was funded by an investment firm and penned by an architectural firm. In 1986, the original developers sold on the project to another partnership of developers. The deal retained the original architectural company, thus left the plans relatively the same on the whole. The whole development was to be mixed use with retail outlets, a hotel, a theatre and residential units. One of the retail units that was to be taken up was to be the flagship store for the Canadian supermarket chain Save on Food. The Save on Foods building was a single-storey steel structure. Now the architectural firm also doubled up as the project coordinator. Part of this role was to work on behalf of the developer to find contractors for the structural, electrical and mechanical engineering sides of the project. A tender was put out, and after 8 bids, the third lowest firm was selected for the structural work. At around the same time, the construction company was hired, who then subcontracted out the steel supply and erection work, who then themselves subcontracted the fabrication to another company who designed the web steel joists. Still following me? Well, at some point during these tenders and subbing out, a suggestion came about making use of the roof of the supermarket for parking. Great idea, and after checking between the engineer and architects, it seemed like the addition would be doable. Thus, the development gained 235 parking spaces on its roof. A plan was laid out to provide a surface for cars parked on the roof. A 3-inch thick wearing surface was employed. This was concrete with chopped glass and fibre reinforcement to prevent surface cracks. In the centre was a 6-inch high, around 5 foot wide walkway for customers to make their way from their cars to a travelator down to the store. Below the top layer was 4 inches of light styrofoam insulation. Under the walkway, which was increased to 10 inches in thickness. Below this was a waterproof membrane, which was applied to the top of the composite corrugated steel concrete structural deck, with a concrete layer of 2.5 inches. This deck was supported by the roof beams, which were then themselves held up by steel columns in a mixture of both cantilever and suspended sections. There was lateral support spread out among the structure, but not every beam received some support. During the construction phase, it was deemed that the walkway was too narrow, and an additional 3 feet each side was added, but instead of having insulation foam, it was just extended with concrete. This added another £24,000 in weight, but no one really thought to check it or query the extra weight. The designer, who was a trainee engineer, thought little of raising the issue, and on top of that, none of the qualified engineers thought to double check the trainee's work. Now, during the project, multiple revisions to the design was made, with revised calculations of the loads that the structure would be subjected to. There would be 4 revised calculations for loads. However, during the different designs, some of the building's beams were reduced in size, from W24 by 104 to W24 times 76. As the design requirements reduced, the amount of deflection the beam would be able to endure was reduced. Now, as the building came together, an issue came around, and this was the beam deflection of 2 inches, causing issues with the travelator housing. The building owners, understandably concerned, requested a review of the problem and requested a fix. Remediation work would require strengthening some beams and extra columns were installed. The building's owners decided a second opinion was needed and they hired another engineering firm to give a report. But in a little nice bit of luck, a certificate was produced by the mill showing samples of the steelwork to exceed the design expectations at over £55,000 per square inch. In comparison, design requirements were £44,000 per square inch. With this in hand, the owners and tenants of the building were happy to carry on with the project and set about the opening day for the Save On Food store to be the 23rd of April 1988. The disaster. It is close to the grand opening of the Save On Food store at Station Square. It is the 23rd of April 1988 and the some 90,000 square feet store is ready for some hot pensioner retail action. Many customers have parked on the spanking new car park on the building's roof, filling up many of the parking rows. When the doors opened and the swarm of the elderly patrons spread out, the number at the 9 AM opening time was estimated to be around 600 customers and 370 members of staff. Just minutes after the opening, staff started to hear cracking and banging noises from the building's roof, right underneath the parking area. Announcements were made over the tannoy system for customers to make their way to the exit. Many heeded the warning and began slowly shuffling towards the checkouts. An amateur photographer by the name of Trevor Bucket was right underneath the twisting beam. He managed to capture this striking photo just before disaster. Creaking and grinding sounds continued from the roof. It then sagged and caved in. Cars, debris and rain all came into the once dry and calm produce area. Only a few were injured, with a store clerk suffering a crushed pelvis from being pinned under some concrete and steel debris. After, other customers were knocked down suffering broken bones. As emergency services attended, it became quite apparent that amazingly, it seemed like no one had been killed in the collapse. 21 would be injured, requiring hospital treatment, but unbelievably, all the lives within the store survived. Just look at the collapse and see how lucky everyone was. The 6,400 square foot cave-in area brought down 20 cars with it, writing them off. This would result, unsurprisingly, in multiple lawsuits between the involved parties, and after being rebuilt, the store was opened a year later. The complex would be knocked down in 2013 to make way for a new building, apartment blocks and a supermarket with half the square footage. But Save On Foods, from the disaster, gained a humorous but kind of unfair nickname. This was Cave On Foods. The company had no part in the design or the build of the project, they were only really the tenant, but they got quite a bit of the bad press. It was rather unfortunate for the company, as you know, customers nearly being crushed in the produce aisle probably doesn't help to sell fruit and veg. The investigation. Now the investigation would be conducted by the commission which was held over 10 days of hearings between May and July 1988. 47 witnesses gave sworn evidence as to how the building was designed and built. Inspections of the building showed a bent beam, where it had twisted from the vertical to the horizontal. This was on a cantilever section of the roof beams. The failure was relatively slow over a period of 4.5 minutes, as it twisted and became dislodged from the column, thus causing the section to collapse, as seen in this shocking photograph. Inspections of the beam showed it to be smaller than what it should have been installed for a building of this type. The plans were pored over, and when compared to what was built, issues were rather clear to see. The investigation found that the beams had been downsized. But why? Well, even a report that was released by the province of British Columbia in August 1988 couldn't really explain it, as stated in the report. For some reason, fully not known, the beam was changed from W24 x 104 to W24 x 76, a beam too small even if laterally supported. It was found that the reduced beam size came around after the 7th revision of the building's drawings, where it must have been incorrectly reduced. This error was not picked up upon, and subsequent revisions only required a check of the revisions, not the plan as a whole. Thus, an unidentified revision could easily be missed. But even though the beam was built and installed to the incorrect size, it was actually noticed before the collapse. You see, the developer and the tenant had raised issues with the beam size, which triggered a third party to be involved in inspecting and developing a remediation plan. But after another engineer looked at the beam, the vital mill certificate was produced from the steel manufacturers, which was used to show that the beam had the required strength for the intended load. But there was a big problem with the mill tests. You see, the mill test was done on a sample cut from the web beam of a W shape. The web usually has a higher test strength than the flange, and the test doesn't account for variation in strength from chemical composition variance or temperature variance during the rolling process. Thus, a test can't really be relied upon. Instead, it is just a general indication of beam strength, definitely not enough to base the need for remediation works or not on, as the tests only look at a small number of samples of the steel production run. The vital error was that none of the professionals involved acted on the undersized beam and changed it, either during design, fabrication or installation. The widened concrete walkway on the roof added to the stress of the failed beam. Estimated, it added a weight increase of 250%. All of these issues were missed at every review, even by the third-party engineers. As such, when the official report was published in August 1988, the finger for blame was firmly placed at the professionals and concluded. The investigation carried out at the Commission raised several tributary issues that will concern people who are involved in the construction industry. The need for greater care by all parties in communicating special and unusual requirements to suppliers and designers is of vital importance on all building projects. The fee for the original designers was also brought into criticism. It was $17,000 on a $5.4 million total construction cost. This was lower than what it should have been, bringing in the accusation that the designers, Tammy, Tacey and Associates, were just rushing through their job, which was likely as the whole construction was started even whilst the ink was still wet on the plans. Now, the accusation in the investigation will result in a professional backlash against Tam, Tacey and Associates and the third-party engineers, MSS Engineering Structural Limited. This would result in 4 engineers at the 2 companies being found guilty of incompetence, negligence and professional misconduct by the panel of the Professional Engineering Governing Body. So that's my video on the cave-in foods disaster. It's going to be a 1 on the scale, as luckily no one died. And this is what I've got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. This is a Plain Difficult production. All videos on the channel are Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike licensed. Plain Difficult videos are produced by me, John, in the currently mild corner of southern London, UK. And all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and Mr. Music, can you play us out please?